أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Our today's topic is demographic transition. The different stages of demographic transition and its explanation. So let's have the slides. What is the definition of demography, demographic transition, and then the different stages of demographic transition. So let's see what I have on the slides. Demographic transition, as you see in the slides, these are the objectives. At the completion of the learner will be able to define population changes in population pyramid, explain factors affecting population change, dependency ratio, sex ratio, discuss changes in life expectancy and changes in age, sex distribution, and discuss changes in major causes of death, changes in age and sex distribution. First, the demography. Demo from ancient Greek word demos means the people, and graphy from grapho implies writing, description, or measurement. So demographic in this sense is the statistical study of population and changes occurring within population over time or space. What does that mean? A statistical study of population and changes within population over time. Statistical study of population or the scientific study of population, and what are the changes? Birth rate increases, death rate increases, or both of them, either they go directly or they go inversely to each other. That is changes in the population over time, or many people living in a single unit of space, or less number of people are living in a space. So that is a comparison of two spaces or places where more people live and in the other place less people are living. Group of individuals of same species, that is the definition of population, living in the same geographic area at the same time. A population is often defined by demographers according to the specific needs of the research and researcher. Three processes are relevant to demography that changes the population. Fertility, if there is increased fertility, population will increase. Mortality, if there is increase in mortality and deaths, population will decrease. And if there is migration, in migration and out migration, that will also affect the magnitude of the population, the number of the people living in a particular area. With in migration, that will increase, and without migration, that will decrease. Basic concepts, there are only two ways to enter a population by birth and by in-migration. There are two ways to leave a population by death or by out-migration. Population density, it is defined as the number of individuals of a species per unit area or volume or space at a given time. Ovals below have same population and different densities. These two ovals have same number of individuals living in this place, and that number is living in this place. The area over here is larger and the area over here is a smaller one as compared to this one. Number of individuals are the same. So they have more congested area and they have open area, more area to live in. So that is the difference between these two ovals. In one area, which is larger, they have got the same number of people, and in the other area, which is a smaller one, they have also got the same number. Now, population structures, the rate of natural increase, which is births, deaths, infant mortality, and life expectancy, all affect the population structure of a country. How? The natural increase. that is the fertility rate, and fertility will increase the population, deaths will decrease the population, infant mortality will also decrease the population, and life expectancy, if the people have more life expectancy, they will increase the population. If they have less life expectancy, the deaths will be more, and there will be a decrease in the population structure. The population structure of a country can be shown by a population or age-6 pyramid. The total population divided into 5 years age groups, the percentage of people in each of those groups, and the percentage of males and females in each group. Trends in the birth rate, death rate, infant mortality rate, and life expectancy. These trends can help a country to plan its future services. For example, more homes for the elderly if there is an aging population, or fewer school if there is a decreasing birth rate. That is self-explanatory. Like, for example, if we have more life expectancy, we will be having a big segment of the population as elderly, and for those elderly people, we need to have geriatrics homes. We have to have geriatrics home so that they can live in. And if there is a decreased number or low fertility rate, then we don't need to have more and more schools to get our children in those schools. The proportion of the population who are economically active and the proportion who are dependent upon them, that is called a dependency ratio. How many people earn and how many people are supported by these earners, that is called a dependency ratio. This is a population pyramid, and the early at the base, it is expanding, and at the top, it is more narrower. So the base shows the children from a group of 5 from 0 to 4, then 5 to 9, then 10 to 14, and so on. So in these groups, it shows that the birth rate or fertility rate is high. More children are born by a woman, and later on, with the passage of time, it decreases. It decreases, and at the top, we have those people who are between 70 to 74 years of age. So we have in this pyramid less population in the elderly people. We have less number of elderly people, so we will be having decreased number of geriatrics home to open for them to live in. But at the base, as we have increased fertility rate, so we will be having more and more schools to be open, to be constructed for these children to be taught to them. So early expansion, wide base, high birth rate, and narrow top, short life expectancy. Few countries today fall in this category. Some of the countries, like for example, African countries and some of the Asian countries as well, who are very poor, they also fall in this category, in this type of pyramid. Now this is another pyramid which is expanding at the base and slightly expanded as compared to the first one. So wide base, high birth rate, middle expands, improved medical care, modern hygiene, and improved diet. In the previous pyramid, we had a narrow middle one. This portion was a narrow one as compared to this one. And the reason was there was less medical facility available to these people, and their life expectancy was decreased, due to which they died earlier. But in this pyramid, as it is expanded as compared to the first one, here we have the people who are living in those countries who have this kind of pyramid. They have more medical facilities, they have more resources, they have more hygienic condition, and that's why their life expectancy increases, and this has an expansion at the middle. This is a stable pyramid. So what is stable pyramid? Birth rate falls, changing attitude towards family planning. Why birth rate falls? because the people tendency was towards family planning so that they can produce less children and to educate them, to give them food, to give them education, and that's why they thought of small family size. Education program, changing societal attitude, and economical factors were some of the factors which compelled these people to bear less number of children so that they can support them. Death rate lower, improved because of improved medical facilities, their death rate became lower, and they lived, their life expectancy increased. Contracting very low birth rate, women in workforce, child rearing is expensive, contraception, state encourages small families, death rate continues to decrease, life expectancies increases. And because of all these factors, this is how a contracting population pyramid. Now, moving ahead towards demographic transition model. Demographic transition model describes a sequence of changes in the relationship between birth and death rates. It suggests that population growth rates fall for all countries can be divided into 4 stages. All countries pass through 4 or 5 stages to a state of maturity. This is a good example or graphical presentation of the demographic stages. Here, this line shows the birth rate and this line shows the death rate, where this green one is showing the population, increase in the population, and here it is decreasing in the population. At the beginning, there were high birth rate and similarly high death rate. The more people were born, the more died. And there was less space between the birth rate and the death rate. And why this occurred? Because of the less food, because of the famine, because of no medical facilities, because of no poor diet, poor hygiene, and because of the non-availability of vaccines. And that's why the space was very small. The number of children they were born, the same number of people they died as well. The same number of children or people they died as well. So there was less space. In the second stage, is the medical, there was an industrial development. Industries developed for medical facilities, for pharmaceutical industries, for agriculture, and all other factors which may help in the life, in increase in life expectancy. So what happened in this stage? The people, they bore, the fertility rate here was high. The fertility, they produce more and more children. They produce more and more children, but suddenly the death rate decreases. And there was a big space between the birth rate and the death rate. So this space indicates the population. And there was a population explosion. In the second stage, there was a population explosion because the people tried to produce more and more children, and at the same time, there was an improvement in the medical facilities, in the hygiene, in the diet. More and more food were produced, and facilities were given to the people, and their life expectancy increased. And that's why there was a population expansion, a population explosion. So the number of people increased and their life expectancy was also increased. And later on, what happened in the third stage, the people thought that if they produce more and more children, how will they support them economically? How will they give them food and other facilities? So they thought about the family planning. They thought about the family size to be decided, and their tendency was towards family planning. And there was also an encouragement by the government to have small family sizes, and they worked on it. So the space became narrow between the birth rate and the death rate. there was a decrease in the birth rate and also decrease in the death rate. And in the fourth stage, what happened? In the fourth stage, the people started working in the industries, the women started working in the industries, and they were not able to bear the burden of many children. The burden of many children, and that's why their tendency was towards decreased birth rate. Decreased birth rate and death rate were also decreased. So there was no space between the death rate and the birth rate, and ultimately the birth rate, the death rate surpassed the birth rate, and there was a negative population. Mean the more there was a reduction in the birth rate, and there was an increase in the death rate. Few countries have entered in this stage, like for example, Japan, where less number of people are born, and more people are died because of their increased life expectancy, because of their improved medical facilities, improved pharmaceutical industries, improve in the development of vaccination, and also improvement in the diet, and all the factor. Their living standard is so much high that so they got an increased life expectancy, and now the more of the people living beyond the age of 100 years. So the people who are beyond the age of 100 years, and there is no more production of the people, so death rate surpasses now the birth rate. So this is what the demographic stages are: stage number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. I think you must have understood what I explained, and if you need any explanation, you can give me your feedback. So I will inshallah explain it further. This is another graph, stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3, showing the same stages and the birth and death rate, the relationship between birth and death rate, and improvement in the medical facility, and so on, what we have discussed in the previous slides. Now, demographic transition. Now, look at the slide, what I explained verbally. Stage 1, high birth rate, high death rate, small growth. High infant mortality, low life expectancy, common a few hundred years ago, and some of the developing countries still have this demographic stage. And stage 2, high birth rate, low death rate, because of the improved medical facilities, because of diet, and because of vaccination, and so on, other factors which are necessary for increasing in life expectancy. So there was a decrease in death rate. Medical and scientific advancement, vaccine, drinking water, and sewage system, and that occurred in 1800 years in the West. Stage 3, low death, declining birth, social program, industrialization, urbanization, and smaller family, tendency towards smaller families. Voluntary decision to reduce family size aided by improved contraception related to improved standard of living, natural increase rate falls. In stage 4, low birth, low death, slow population growth, changing role of women. The women change their role, as in the previous stages they were living in the home as housewife, but later on in other stages they started working in the industries. So they changed their role. Because of changing this role, they were not able to produce children. Family planning programs, certain family planning programs was started in different countries of the world. They worked on it, and the families, they planned for small family sizes. Some African countries, birth rate still high. Sub-Sahara Africa, because of HIV, there are high death rates. So they are still in stage 1 or in stage 2, more likely in stage 1. In stage 5, birth rate lower than the death rate. As I've already discussed, that the birth rate was lower than the death rate surpasses the birth rate. And further, however, some European nations and Japan starting to enter this stage. Demographic indicators, because demography is interested in changes in human population, demographer focus on specific indicators of change. Two of the most important indicators are birth and death rates, which are also referred to as fertility and mortality. Additionally, demographers are also interested in migration trends or the movement of people from one location to another, which affects the number of people living in a geographical area, means it affects the population size. Replacement level fertility, it refers to the number of children that a woman or monogamous couple must have in order to replace the existing population. Replacement level fertility is generally set at 2.1 children in a woman's lifetime. This number varies by geographic region given different mortality rates. The reason the number is set to 2.1 children per woman is because 2 children are needed to replace the parents, and an additional one-tenth of a child is needed to make up for the mortality of children and women who do not reach the end of their reproductive years. Total fertility rate, the total fertility of population is the average number of children that would be born to a woman over her lifetime. And the reproductive age of the woman is from 15 to 49 years of age. So the number of children born to a woman from 15 to 49 years of age, that is total fertility rate. She were to experience the exact current age specific fertility rates through her lifetime, and she were to survive from birth through the end of her productive life, it is obtained by summing the single year age specific rate at a given time. Mortality refers to the finite nature of humanity. People die. Mortality and demography is interested in the number of deaths in a given time or place or the proportion of deaths in relation to the population. Some of the more common demographic measure of mortality include the crude death rate, which include the children, the women, the old, the young, all types of individual, and crude death rates. So their deaths per 1,000. Infant mortality, the annual number of deaths of children less than 1 year old per 1,000 live births, and life expectancy, the number of years which an individual have at a given age can expect to live at present mortality rates. And it depends upon the facilities that is provided to an individual in a country. If the country have a high standard of living, they have more facility, their life expectancy will be an increased one. And if they have less facilities, they will be having a low life expectancy. So infant mortality by region, 1950 to 2050. The green line is for Africa. The death rate slowly and gradually decreases. And the red line, it shows the Latin American and the Caribbean countries, whereas the red line shows more developed nations, where the death rate is quite lower than as compared to the other region of the world. Life, the average number of years an individual of a given age is expected to live if current age-specific mortality rates continue to apply. Life expectancy at birth, average number of years a newborn is expected to live if current mortality structure persists throughout its life. Because of the gender difference, life expectancy is calculated also separately for men and women. Life expectancy is an indicator of current health and mortality conditions. These are the life expectancies of different countries of the world, different continents of the world. The green one shows the Asia, the yellow one is the Africa, the orange one is the more developed nations, the purple is the Latin African and the Caribbean countries, and this is the whole world. The blue one is the whole world on average. So the developed countries, they are likely, their life expectancy is more than 80 years, followed by the Latin American countries, then followed by the Asian countries, and at the last one, Africa. They have got less life expectancy as compared to other regions of the world. Population change, the difference between the size of the population at the end and at the beginning of a period, it is equal to the algebraic sum of the natural increase and net migration. Change in population size, increase how the population increases. If you have more births, they will produce more children and the population will increase. If you have more deaths, the population will decrease. So on global scale, the change in the population is due to the number of births and deaths. And it also, this population size affected by immigration, and immigration, the number of people who come in a population to increase it. And the immigration means the out migration, the number of people who leave that specific country or region and that's why the population will decrease. So in local populations such as the population of the United States, the number of births, deaths, immigrants and immigrants affect population size. So calculating population change growth rate is equal to B minus D, B for birth rate and D for death rate, plus immigration in migration rate and immigration out migration. The number of people who come in a country, who enter a country is immigrant, and the number of people who leave the country is migrant. So this is the formula for calculating the overall growth rate. Population growth rate, net migration immigration rate minus immigration, natural increase crude birth rate minus crude death rate, and population growth rate, natural increase plus net migration. Dependency ratio, the dependency ratio is a measure showing the number of dependents age 0 to 14 years and over the age of 65 years. These two segments of the population are dependent because the children cannot work. They are in education, they are studying in the schools, and the people who are 65 years and above, they are retired people, so they cannot work. They have no more productive age. And between 15 years and 64 years, these people are in working age, they are in their productive life. So they are basically earning, and the rest of the people from 0 to 14 and 65 years and above, they are dependent upon them. Different countries have got different dependency ratio. In poor countries, the dependency ratio is more as compared to the European countries, because in Europe, when a child reaches to a specific age, that is 14, and in some countries that is 18, then the parents are not supporting those children. So they are earning by themselves and they are supporting themselves. And the people who are 65 years and above, they cannot work. They are living their retired life, so they are also dependent on the productive people. Dependency ratio, comparison between the productive working and non-productive population, often expressed in non-productive per 1,000 productive. So comparison between productive and non-productive through this population pyramid, the segment of the population who are economically active, it is from 15 years to 64 years, and the people who are older, 65 years and above, makes this segment of the population, and below 15 years make this segment of the population. These are the females and these are the male. Both males and females in both the segments, they are dependent. So they will be supported by those people who are economically active. The dependency ratio can be expressed as children 0 to 14 and elder 65 years and above into 100, and those of working age. For example, UK 1971 figures in millions. These are people in million, 13,387 million and 7,307 million over 31,616 million into 100, that makes 65.45. So for every 100 people of working age, there were 65.4 people dependent upon them. If 100 people were active, were productive, they were earners, they had to support 65 people. Sex ratio is the ratio of male to a female in a population. The sex ratio is defined as the number of males over the number of female. So sex ratio male over female. The numerator of the sex ratio male is not part of the denominator, and that's why it is called a ratio. If you take the numerator from the denominator, then it becomes a proportion that is not a ratio. But here, the male is not taken from the female, so it is a ratio. Thus, the SR is not a proportion, which could be, for example, proportion of males is equal to male over male plus female. So here the male, the numerator is taken from the denominator. So in this case, it would be a proportion rather than a ratio. Epidemiological transition. As mortality has changed, the caste structure has shifted from a preponderance of death due to infection and parasitic causes to a preponderance of deaths due to degenerative causes or injuries. So the causes of morbidity and mortality, we discuss in epidemiological transition. Cause structure has shifted from a preponderance of death due to infectious and parasitic changes to a preponderance of deaths due to degenerative causes or injuries. Initially, there were more deaths because of infectious diseases and parasitic infection, but today more deaths are occurred because of degenerative process and because of road traffic accidents, that is injuries. So this change, which is associated with the change in age pattern of mortality, this change, which is associated with a change in age pattern of mortality, is called the epidemiological transitions. During the epidemiological transition, a long-term shift occurs in mortality and disease pattern, whereby pandemics of infections are replaced by degenerative and man-made diseases. Age of pestilence and famine, as I have discussed in the demographic transition, that in the early stage 1, there was pestilence and famine, a drought. Less food was available to the people, and there was no vaccine, no medical facilities, no hygiene, and that's why the death rate was high, the mortality rate was high, and the fertility rate was also high, because the people tend to produce more and more children as the death rate was high, and the life expectancy was lower. Age of receding pandemics, epidemics become less frequent. Infectious diseases in general become less frequent. A slow rise in degenerative diseases begin to appear. Age of degenerative and man-made diseases, non-communicable diseases, for example, cancer, diabetes, chronic respiratory disorders, and cardiovascular disease, injuries, and trauma. Here, poor use of ecological resources and lack of social and economic capital. So the age of pestilence and famine, this one, the health was poor and the life expectancy was lower. Now, in this stage, increase economic growth, improve use of ecological resources, and provide basic social services, and that increases the life expectancy. So that was the age of receding pandemics, and the age of chronic diseases, improve medical care, and social determinants influence health. More and more facilities were available to people, and the people got more life expectancy. They crossed the ages of 80 years, 90 years, and 100, and that's why so many degenerative diseases took place among this population. First epidemiological transition. The first epidemiological transition occurred 100 years, centuries ago, when men moved towards the agricultural society. By adopting a nomadic lifestyle, people stayed in one place and increased their contact with human and animal waste and contaminated their water supplies. And even the cultivation of soil and clearing of land exposed people to insecticides, bacteria, and parasites, so they got infection. As cities grew and exploration of the surrounding world increased, men spread deadly disease in ever greater numbers, and there was an increase in death rate, life expectancy decreasing. The epidemiological transition was described as the age of pestilence and famine. Epidemic, famines, and wars caused huge number of deaths. Infectious diseases were dominant, causing high mortality rates, especially among children, because of the availability of no vaccines. The domestication of animals brought other diseases vector in close contact with the human. Anthrax, tuberculosis gained access to human host. While increasing food security and nutrition, this transition also introduced several significant disease factors as well. Smallpox in this stage, cholera, plague, influenza all became major threats for humanity. Smallpox, 12,000 years of terror. It first appeared in agricultural settlement in northeastern Africa around 10,000 years BC. Egyptian merchants spread it from Africa to India. In Europe, near the end of the 18th century, the disease accounted for nearly 400,000 deaths a year, each year. Plague, the plague, which is called the Black Death, the first recorded cause of the plague was in China in 224 BC. but the most significant outbreak was in Europe in the mid-14th century. Over a 5-year period from 1347 to 1352, 25 million people died. 1/3 to 1/2 of the European population was wiped out. Cholera, the major cholera epidemic are generally listed as first from 1817 to 1823, an epidemic and pandemic, and the second was from this period. The third one and the last one was from 1961 to 1970, and huge number of people died because of cholera. High levels of mortality and fertility. Crude death rate is high and ranges from 30 to 50 deaths per 1,000 population. Infant mortality rate 200 to 300 deaths per 1,000 live births, and life expectancy was between 20 to 40 years of age. Very less life expectancy. In this stage, women of childbearing age also face considerable risk due to the complication associated with pregnancy and childbirth. Some developing countries are still in this stage. Second epidemiological transition began roughly 200 years ago with the Industrial Revolution. While many of the existing diseases brought forth during the first transition certainly did not go away, new chronic non-infectious degenerative diseases were added to the mix. In the second stage, this phase was described as the age of receding pandemics by Omran. It developed in reduction in the prevalence of infectious diseases and a fall in mortality rates. Crude death rate reaches a level of less than 30 deaths per 1,000 live birth. Infant mortality rate was 150 per 1,000 live births. As a consequence, life expectancy at birth climbed rapidly from about 35 to 50 years of age. In this stage, increased economic growth led to a sharp fall in the deaths from infectious diseases and from malnutrition. This improved occurred before effective medical treatment and was due to the impact of following intervention. Clean water was made available to the people, improved in sanitation, suppression of the mosquito malaria. So malaria also engulfed so many people, so many thousands and lakhs of people, and it was overcome. Increased food safety because of canning, because of preservative, because of chemicals, refrigeration and pasteurization, increased pre and post natal care for pregnant women, and they survived their children. So these are the graphs, the different graphs for measles. How does it decrease the death rates? For scarlet fever because of penicillin, and this is because of vaccine. Typhoid fever for the introduction of chloramphenicol, and the TB for the introduction of isoniazid, which is anti-tuberculotic drugs. So a sudden decrease in the death rates in all these diseases. And take it further, these are the different types of diseases which got decreased mortality rate because of the availability of certain vaccines and drugs. Finally, the introduction of modern healthcare and healthcare technologies, immunization program, introduction of antibiotics, enable the control and elimination of group of infectious diseases such as diphtheria, polio, and smallpox, as I already discussed. Technology also brought it smoke state, industries, chemical toxin, working indoors, stress. Although we overcome the size of the population, we overcome the death rates, but with increased life expectancy and with introduction, the development of these technologies and development for pharmaceutical industries and agriculture in all the fields, it also brought about certain factors which are hazard to the human being, which are poison to the human being, like for example, chemical toxin, working indoors, stress, greater access to healthful food beside advances in medicine and sanitation. All with this second transition, we have seen rise in allergies, asthma, autoimmune disorder, and sexually transmitted diseases as well. And in the third stage, began in the late 20th century, this phase was described as the age of chronic diseases by Omran. In this stage, the elimination of infectious diseases makes way for chronic diseases among the elderly. The major causes of death are so-called chronic degenerative and man-made diseases such as cardiovascular diseases, cancer, and diabetes mellitus with increased life expectancy. So this is what we have. The comparison between the modern age and in the stage one. there was increase in the infectious diseases, decrease in the infectious diseases in the modern. Sorry, this is a modern period where the infectious diseases got very down, very decreased, but there are certain diseases that took place, for example, trauma, non-insulin dependent diabetes mellitus, cardiovascular chronic heart disease, and cancer. Due to low levels of mortality and fertility, there is little population growth. Crude death rate stabilized at a level of less than 20 deaths per 1,000 population, a reduction. By the end of third stage, infant mortality reaches to a level of less than 25 deaths per 1,000 live births. When the health transition is at advanced stages, life expectancy may exceed 80 years. However, the prevalence of one or more diseases mean that such a long life also includes on average a relatively long period of morbidity. So this is what the comparison is. Infectious diseases got down, but the non-communicable diseases, they are increased in number. They have more prevalence than the infectious diseases. This is another health transition mortality rates from 1910 to 1970 in the United States. Although death is a universal reality, the condition or disease that cause death have changed over time. Today, the leading cause of death is cancer, while 60 years ago, before significant public health intervention, infectious diseases and accidents. The first half of the 20th century saw several significant public health improvements, including immunization against smallpox and diphtheria, milk pasteurization to prevent bovine tuberculosis, and chlorination to disinfect drinking water. In addition, routine childhood immunization became common during this period. Life-altering scientific discoveries such as insulin and penicillin also led to treatment that were more effective for diabetes and infection. The downward trend in death rate reflects the effect of these public health intervention, most of which were aimed at reducing deaths from infectious parasitic diseases. In addition, while maternal mortality, deaths associated with pregnancy and delivery, peaking during the mid-1930s, improvement in prenatal and postnatal care have a led beneficial effect on the life expectancy of women. And these are the references. Thank you very much. Please share the video and like the video, share the video, subscribe this video so that maximum number of learners can take benefit of these videos. Thank you very much.